Good morning, Title I coordinators, and thank you for joining us for our November webinar. My name is Erin Suddeth, and I'm the branch manager of the Title I Part A Support and Improvement branch here at the Kentucky Department of Education. And I'm just getting our slides pulled up here. There we go. Okay, so before we get started, I think everyone's already done this, but just make sure that you've got your camera turned off and your mic muted, just to allow everybody to focus on the presentation. We will have time at the end for questions, so if you're joining us on Teams, if you want to use the raise hand feature and come off mute or type in the chat, you can do that at that time. If you're joining through the media portal, you can also just send an email to me at erin.suddeth@education.ky.gov. And we are recording the webinar as always, and it will be posted to the webpage probably later today or tomorrow at the latest. And I believe David is not with us this morning. I think it's just me. It is. All right. If you weren't able to watch the October webinar, I definitely recommend going and checking that out. We had, as always, some announcements and reminders, a look at the newsletter, but our main thing that we covered was an overview of all of the recent updates to the Title I Part A handbook. It was a pretty high level overview, but still a lot of good information there. So make sure that you go back and watch that recording. So for today, after all of our announcements and reminders, I'm going to share some information on the testing transparency requirements that are in ESSA. And I'm also going to share a new resource from KDE that is designed to help you meet those requirements. So announcements, we really just have one announcement this month, and that is that registration is open for the 2025 National ESEA Conference, and that's at eseanetwork.org. This year's conference is February 19th through 21st in Austin, Texas, and you can attend virtually or in person. There's over 100 sessions covering a wide variety of education-related topics, and they provide attendees with lots of opportunities to get valuable insights into new educational trends and advancements, local and state projects of federal level education programs and policies. There's also, I believe, 3 keynote presentations that are going to have some unique perspectives from thought leaders and experts in their respective fields. I do want to say that, and you probably saw this in the newsletter, I think, although KDE has paid registration fees for up to 2 district staff to attend the conference in recent years, we do not have funds available for that purpose this year. So we're not going to be offering that. As a reminder, any sort of cost associated with program-related professional development, so that means registration, travel costs, lodging, meal reimbursement, all of those things are an allowable use of Title I Part A funds for districts or at the school level. Now, for those of you at the district level, if we're talking about the coordinator attending, then those costs should be reserved in the administrative cost set aside. Okay, we always like to take a look at where we are in terms of the current year's funds and just making sure that we are obligating those timely and to kind of guarantee that we're going to make that 15% carryover limitation requirement by September 30th of 2025. So if you are just spreading that out evenly across the first 15 months of the grant, by November, you want to have around 28% of 310L funds obligated. So just check in with your finance officer, and if you're significantly below that percentage, just make sure that you're kind of reviewing things and that you're still going to be on track to not carry over more than 15% next September. Even though that seems like it's really far away, it'll just be here before you know it. I know some of you are not able to draw down on funds yet. You can't draw down on your funds until your entire application is fully approved by KDE. But once you are able to do that, you can use Project 310L funds to go back and pay for allowable and approved expenditures that date back to July 1st of 2024 when this particular grant just started. We also have 3 open projects right now. We've got 310J, K, and L. These are just all of the associated dates with those various awards. Nothing, we don't have any deadlines that are like right around the corner, but again, everything just gets here before you know it. So make sure that you are keeping an eye on these things, checking in with your finance officer. Also, don't forget to check your open applications in GMAP just to make sure that you don't have any outstanding revisions that have been requested by KDE. I took a quick look this morning and it looked like there are between 30 and 50 applications, both for FY23 and FY24 that are not currently listed as KDE Consolidated Consultant approved. Now, some of that may be for programs other than Title I Part A, but I recommend just going in there and double checking to make sure that you've taken care of everything that you need to, and maybe sharing that with the other programs in your district if there's something that they need to address. Our November newsletter had a lot of great information, as always. We had an announcement about the updated Title I handbook, just some next steps about comparability reports, information about monitoring and new resources for monitoring, an announcement about that NASPOC conference I just mentioned. Our In Case You Missed It article was about inventory and making sure you don't let that fall by the wayside. That's a really important one. And maybe most importantly for this newsletter is the Principal's Perspective article, and it is called Holiday Parties Beware, just kind of talking about the difference between Title I Part A parent and family engagement events and things that we can pay for with those funds versus those more social entertainment events that are very fun and a great way to connect, but they're not aligned with the intent of Title I Part A. So we shouldn't be using Title I Part A funds to pay for those events. So be sure that you have forwarded that on to all of your Title I principals if you haven't already done so. We can also subscribe them to the newsletter. If they want to do that individually, they can do that on the newsletter. If you would like to just send me a list of all the email addresses, I can add those in as well, whatever you need. Okay, moving on to our main topic for today. So one of the updates to the Title I handbook that I reviewed last month was some expanded information on testing transparency. And that's found in the Parent and Family Engagement section on page 19 of the revised handbook. So this comes from ESSA 1112E2, and it requires districts to notify the parents of students in Title I schools of some information related to testing transparency, and this should occur at the beginning of the school year. The handbook revisions were intended to emphasize the fact that there are actually 2 separate components related to testing transparency. And the district must meet both of those components to demonstrate compliance. So the first one is just the right to request information. And then the second part is additional information on required assessments. So we're going to look at both of those. Okay, the first one is just called testing transparency in general. So districts just need to notify parents that they can request, and of course the district will provide in a timely fashion, information regarding any state or district policy regarding student participation in mandated assessments. And this again comes from ESSA 1112E2A. It also states that the notification should include a policy, procedure, or parental right to opt the child out of such assessment where applicable. And I put where applicable in italics because this relates directly to Kentucky. There is a link to KDE's testing opt-out message on the slide. It's also available in that revised handbook. And I'm not going to go into all the details of this resource here, but I want to just highlight that it states, although parents have the right to opt their children out of public education by choosing homeschool or private school, parents do not have the right to pick and choose the provisions of public education with which they comply. So if you have any questions about the testing opt-out message, there's contact email on that document, and that'll connect you with somebody in KDE's Office of Assessment and Accountability. They're going to be the experts on that message as opposed to, say, me or your Title I consultant. So what exactly do you have to share with parents for that first part of demonstrating compliance. So this notification needs to include the parent's right to request information on those mandatory assessments, the name and contact information where parents can submit those requests. That's probably going to be your district assessment coordinator. And a statement regarding the inability to opt out of statewide testing that I just mentioned, maybe even a link to that opt-out message. Now, ESSA does not specify a method for sharing this information with parents. We do recommend that you consider making information available through a variety of means, and not just for this. We usually recommend that for anything that you're supposed to share with parents. So you might want to do this via a letter, posting on the district website, putting it in a handbook, etc. Okay, this is the second part of that component, testing transparency, additional information. There is a lot of information on this slide, so I'm going to break it down here. So first of all, we do see that for this information, ESSA specifies the method in which it must be posted, and I've got that part underlined. So it must be posted on the district website, and if practicable, the school websites as well. So this information could be its own page on the website. It could be a document that's posted to the website, but either way, ESSA also tells us that it needs to be clear and easily accessible. That's very important. So next we see who this applies to. It says for each grade served by the district. And then finally, it tells us what information the district is required to share. Information on the mandatory statewide assessments and any mandatory district-wide assessments. Specifically, we want to look at the subject matter that's going to be assessed, the purpose for which the assessment was designed and is being used, the source of the requirement for this assessment, and if the information is available, you want to also include things like the amount of time that students will spend taking the assessment, the schedule for the assessment, the time and format for disseminating results. So as I said, we do have a new testing transparency resource for you to help you meet this requirement. It's called the Parents' Right to Know Testing Transparency Resource, and it is available in the Title I Sample Documents folder. That's available on our Documents and Resources webpage. It's also linked throughout the handbook. It's actually a zip file that has a number of resources in there. So this particular resource has a general overview of the testing transparency requirements, as well as some sample language that can be customized by districts to meet ESSA requirements. Now, I want to point out that you're not required to use this language provided by KDE. It's just something that we're putting out there to try to make it a little bit easier on you. And I also want to really emphasize that this resource replaces an old resource that we had. It was called the Sample Notice on Testing Transparency. Many districts that we've monitored, I believe, have been using that one. So you're going to want to make sure that you go back and replace information with this new one, because that old one didn't have everything that it really should have. I'm not going to open up the resource. I've just kind of put the information on a couple of slides here. So this is the sample language that's available there and can be easily customized by the district. So this is for that first part, that general component. And you can see that all you have to do is add your district name where that's highlighted and the contact information, which again is probably going to be your DAC. So that's all you have to do, and then take this blurb and put that in a letter, in a handbook, on the website, or any combination of those things. Just make sure that it gets shared out with parents. Okay, and this is the sample language for that additional testing transparency requirement. And this is the one that has to be posted on the district website and where practicable, the school websites. And then included elsewhere at the district's discretion, such as a handbook or a letter or something. So first, we've got just a general paragraph explaining Kentucky's all-inclusive assessment system, and then some links to the KDE web pages for individual assessments like the KSA, ACT, Access for our English learner students, the kindergarten screener. And then we have the section that needs to be customized with the applicable information for each individual assessment. So of course, you're going to put the district name there, then the assessment name, the grades that are going to be taking the assessment, a list of the subject being assessed, and just a brief description of the purpose of the assessment. Those were the required components. And then remember, there were some additional things, if you can share, like the time students are going to be taking the test, schedule for disseminating results, those things, you're going to want to include those too. And that is actually all of the information that I have for you today. So as always, we're going to check for questions. So you can put those in the chat, or you can send those to me via email. Okay, I don't see anything in the chat. Let me look at email. I don't see anything yet. You can always send these to me later. You can also send it directly to your Title I consultant. They're able to help you with these things. Right, our last webinar for the 2024 calendar year is Thursday, December 12th at 10 a.m. Eastern, as always. And we also have a link here to our Title I webinar feedback survey. We do value your feedback. We want to learn what you find helpful, what you want to see more of in webinars. So if you want to submit that information anonymously, you can do that through the feedback survey. And of course, you can always just email that to me or your consultant as well. And we include a link to this survey in all of our newsletters as well. We did have 2 submissions after last month's webinar, so I appreciate that feedback. We had a request to consider adding a heading or a topic to the saved newsletters and webinars to make it easier to locate specific topic quickly. So I can kind of try to brainstorm some ideas on that. On our newsletters, we do have a little box up in the top right-hand corner of each issue. It says in this issue, and just a bulleted list of all of the articles that are included. But if this was your feedback, feel free to send me an email to kind of give me a better idea of what you're envisioning, and then I can see what we can do if anything's going to be feasible for that. We also had some positive feedback about going over the handbook and a request to maybe look at a different section of the handbook each month. And that's kind of funny because as I was doing the webinar last month, I thought, oh, maybe I could look more in depth at some of these each month. So monthly might not be possible, but I can definitely look into incorporating more in-depth reviews of different handbook sections in future webinars. Okay, and we do have a question that's come into the chat. So can you clarify what needs to be done for testing transparency if we've already sent the notification this year? If the notification didn't contain all of the information that it should have, then you would just need to make sure that the parents get that additional information. And I don't see any more questions. So again, if you think of any after the fact, then just send those to me in an email and I will get you an answer. And thank you all for joining, and have a happy Thanksgiving next week.